when the mysis are coming up. And when the mysis go down in the morning and the kokanee come up to feed, they pass again. They pass each other in the night and in the morning. They pass each other twice. It's not really a good food item when you're only going past each other up and down. The West Arm, however, the West Arm is kind of neat. And this is a little bit, if you can understand this, you'll understand why people thought mysis were a great thing to introduce. When the mysis come up to feed at night, they get swept over into the West Arm. Because the West Arm isn't that deep, they can't get down and away from the kokanee. And that's one of the reasons why the kokanee in the West Arm, in the 60s especially, got to be, whoa, as big as sea-run sockeye. So, what can we do with mysis? Short of introducing something else to take care of them, possibly, and maybe introducing a whole nother problem we couldn't foresee, or the application of some chemicals which we don't want to even consider, there's nothing we can do with mysis. Nothing.
So you're just speculating that, or
speculating that there's nothing we can do?
Well, I mean, is that through fact of research, or is that what I'm wondering is, are we doing some research to try and combat this problem?
Yeah.
The fact that these two organisms move past each other in daylight and dark may be a key to being able to reduce the numbers of the mysis if they're up near the surface in the dark. There's got to be some research done on this.
Ken, we dearly wish there was. People all over the world that have this problem are looking at it. We've all come to the same conclusion. We're stuck with it. We're stuck with it. Questions? Sir?
Are the kokanee not eating the mysis?
Oh, some larger kokanee will. Again, as they pass by them going down at night, and as they pass by them going up in the morning. But typically, no. Not in the main lake. In the West Arm, yes. Because the kokanee, they come, if you will, picture the deep lake, the sill to the West Arm, and then the basins and the river sections. Well, the kokanee gets swept into there, or the mysis do, I'm sorry, and the kokanee just sit there and feed on them. And at night, when the mysis try and, or in the day when the mysis try and go down to get away from the light, they can't. They can't get deep enough to get away from the kokanee. So in the West Arm, yes. In the main lake, very, very infrequently. Someone else had a question?
You know how they're talking about introducing these sterilized insects in like these agricultural?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because they do a similar thing. Okay, they were able to introduce these.
That's a neat idea. That's a neat
They
idea.
introduce a whole bunch of sterilized ones, right? And then, you know.
Arf? Arf? Tell you what, I'll think about that one, okay? Yeah.
If it works for mosquitoes, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
It would for sure.
I wonder how one might sterilize mysis shrimp.
I don't know. I wouldn't.
I'll tell you what, write it down, and I'll make some inquiries. There's an expert on mysis shrimp back at the University of Trent. Okay, write it down for me. I'd be interested to see.
So be careful.
Possible. Questions? Are there any other questions, sir?
You were saying that the Americans were toying with the idea of putting nutrients into the reservoir behind the Libby Dam.
Yes? Toying.
If it's that nutrient deficient, then why have you pinned the basis of the problem on the fact that the Libby Dam is there?
Essentially what happens, sort of have to understand how phosphorus enters all lakes naturally. Erosion takes place out in a drainage area of the lake, right? And these high tributaries and steep tributaries. Rocks tumble down in the higher flows, they grind up, and you get two things. You get those nutrients going into solution, and you have silt particles that, because of the charges, attract some of these nutrients. Those things then come down formally into the Kootenay River, which is basically just a conduit for this phosphorus-laden material, water and sediments, coming down into Kootenay Lake. And when you look in the sediment of Kootenay Reservoir, as that water enters it now, because it's a lake, it slows down. The silt particles settle out, By the time it gets way down to close to the Libby Dam, there's not that much sediment in the silt. And what material stays in solution is taken up by the algae in this lake. And those algae are consumed by zooplankton and the food chain, essentially. So that's the reason why, and without pointing a finger at our sister management agency, they've taken some rather strange management practices, and they're fumbling around for answers to a problem that they've never been able to pin down. And they just think, maybe this will work. Well, that's right. There's tons of kokanee in Kootenay Lake Reservoir. And just to give you an example of basic, again, kokanee biology, in 1990 there were tons of kokanee in the reservoir. 1991, last summer, that tremendous amount of water that came through, just tremendous, flushed so many kokanee out and so many rainbow out that there was a tremendous fishery in the Kootenay River downstream of the dam for kokanee and for rainbow. And what happened with the kokanee in the reservoir? Their size went way up. And all it takes is, 1 year, and the size all of a sudden starts going back down. So that gives you an indication as to how quickly kokanee size can change in relation to the amount of nutrients and in relation to the number of kokanee in the system in total. Questions?
Yeah.
Chris?
Could the Gerard trout switch to another prey item once and would they?
Could they and would they? Could kokanee or could Gerard switch to another food item if the kokanee disappear? And more importantly, would they? Kokanee are what are called, another buzzword here, that we call them pelagic. They live out in the main part of the lake, right out in the middle of the lake. And even though occasionally you can catch some on shore, for the most part they're out in the middle. The Gerard rainbow also live out in the middle of the lake. We thought that as the kokanee numbers went down, they would start to move on shore and feed on things like those pea-mouth chub and maybe whitefish and maybe suckers. Well, as I said earlier, they don't. They don't and they won't. They're constrained. They're programmed to stay in the middle of the lake, to feed in deep waters, and to feed on what's out there. The only fish out there, not absolutely, because occasionally you can find other little weird things out there, squawfish. The only fish out in the middle of the lake is kokanee. The only thing out there for them to prey on is kokanee. Without kokanee, no Gerards. Sir?
Do you think the increased size of the kokanee in the north arm with your fertilization,
Right.
would they then possibly eat more of these ribs if they got the bigger size?
The kokanee, again, because of this passing in the night, they're not really around them all the time. Conceivably they could, because there would probably be more mysids, but as far as they're having an impact to the point of reducing the mysid population, probably not.
How optimistic are we about this program?
Oh, we're really optimistic about this
I'm glad to
program.
hear that. Because
It's our only hope.
If we, no, it isn't your only hope, because if you have this hope, you got another one. But
Okay.
what I'm really getting at is if this was to drag, and suddenly it wasn't working, because I don't, even though you're optimistic, you're not 100% optimistic.
No.
You're sort of somewhere in there. What have we got coming along?
What else is
Where's
there?
the next program coming from? Because we can't lose the lake.
You know what? There really isn't anything else. I talked about some of the other options.
Yeah.
We could wipe out the predators. That's another option. That might allow the kokanee population to come back, but we don't really think people want that. The problem, again, if I can go back to that food chain, showed you the food chain, that's the source of everything in Kootenay Lake. That's the Kootenay Lake ecosystem. That first step is gone, and because of that, everything else is affected. That's where you have to start. You have to build at the bottom. You can't start higher up. You can't start with more algae, throwing algae into the lake. You can't start by throwing more zooplankton into the lake. It won't work. Questions?
On the technique of spreading the fertilizer from the barge, are you going to grind it up a bit so it dissolves right away, or are you gonna pre-dissolve it? or-
It's a liquid agricultural fertilizer. We actually discuss it in that little orange handout sheet. We talk about it there. So it'll be mixed up in the water by the
Won't
crop
sink to the
wash.
bottom.
Won't sink to the bottom. And that's why we have to use a liquid fertilizer. Question? Someone have one over here? Rick?
If the program is judged to be successful, will you start to fertilize the south and maybe increase?
That's an option. It's an option to do the south arm, but we have to continue the experiment just on the north arm. We have to do it and be sure that we know why we got the response we get. And
The 50 tons that are going in, is that the total from both Duncan and Kootenay, or is that just what occurred naturally?
that's just, there was 100, the total phosphorus loading was 140 metric tons. Of that, 90 came in from the Kootenay, 50 came in from the Duncan. Questions? That's it? Okay, again, I said this earlier. Thank you for coming. Please take the time to fill in your comment sheets about anything you have to say, if you're in favor of it, if you have questions. Please take the time to read the display. Thanks a lot.
Says up here, possum shrimp. But although oh, that's stupid, eh? What a shame.
I guess at that time they weren't aware of just how the thing worked.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the meantime, it's very complex and very changed.
It is. It's a very complex.
You try to solve one problem, you add two or three. You try to.
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah, that's right. Fool with Mother Nature, you know. That's quite
Yeah, you never know what that is you wind up with.
But this is what kills me, this thing. You get artificial fertilizer pumped in the lake, and populations go like that, eh?
Yeah, but in those days they had humongous blooms on the lake too. Yeah.
But they were so much stuff was pumped in, and then the government told them to cut it off right away. They told Kamiko you try to shut right down. No more effort, and then Kamiko wanted to gradually wean it away. But instead, the government said no. You gotta shut it right down. Well, there's other things going on there too. There was. You remember those debates? I don't remember the debates. Because I talked to this guy, a friend of mine down in 66. But no, yeah, it was even earlier. Well, maybe at 65 and 60. He was quite involved with 66.
It's a fairly complicated issue.
Yeah. I don't know whether they know all the answers yet. This is going to be like
Oh, they don't. They're just fishing in the dark.
the route is experimental.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, this is the only thing that's put this way that makes sense. Logically thinking. But that doesn't mean it's a fix.
The way I see it now is it's just becoming one big fish farm sort of situation. Like they have in Spokane Valley. John Hurd and those guys have had, having 13 little ponds and stuff, having nice fresh water supply and stuff, and they have to throw the food into to keep it going.
And that's right.
That's what because things are so screwed up.
Well, but I think a lot has
So
to do with the low water levels. You see, in the good old days, you got to remember before there were any dams, they used to flood quite a bit of land. And of course, all this stuff gets washed in. See, now you don't have this. Plus, now you have, like he says, you have the low water level. And these little guys that come in, they get into the deep water and they get eaten by the bigger guys, like the lick and split. So they don't have a chance to mature. This is true. I mean, this is something that it should be working. There's
It's a big fish pond, though, I call it, rationalized now, because there's no way you can do it unless you blow it down.
What I don't understand is that when they had that big migration of kokanees a few years back, how come is that these were fish from the main lake? They all got drowned up here in the south. There was a humongous migration. Survives. That's what what brought this on? I don't think anybody still knows. Yeah, oh sure. 5 years ago. Somewhere around about that.
Yeah.
It comes down and cruises past Kootenay Lake, right? The big ones that spawn.
This was around.
Hang on, this was the time of the fertilizing.
Just out of curiosity.
A lot of these guys were hard. I talked to them. A lot of these, all these little guys that they had in the pens when they were fertilizing the West Arm like this set up here. A lot of those kokanee that they saved out of that out of these turbines there, they had one fin clipped over there.
Oh, yeah. So they fed
No, that's a fertilizing thing. It's somewhat simple.